Qui-Gon Jinn.
Even at those days when it was, I mean, just like you were saying, that all that mythological stuff. I mean, if you look at what Robert did, just at Robert. I mean,
Well,
like you said,
that's mythology. That's pure
right.
mythology.
He shot, like you said, 25 short films before he even got to that point. And he wasn't planning on, becoming Robert Rodriguez with that film. He was planning to go for the
No.
Spanish film market with
Video
that.
market.
Yeah, he was trying to make directed to VHS films. He wasn't trying
But
to do that stuff.
but I
Like,
will also but I'll also throw something else out at you, and this might blow your mind, but I'm sure you realize this, that if Robert Rodriguez shows up today with El Mariachi, we will never hear of Robert Rodriguez.
right.
If Kevin Smith shows up with Clerks today, we would have never heard of who Kevin Smith was. And I can go down the line with a lot of it. Do you think Slacker would make anything
No,
today? Like, do
no.
you think, at all? Do you truly think that Sex Lies and Videotape, maybe it would, but it would make it might make some noise. The only one out of that entire crew that would still make noise, I think, is Tarantino. If Reservoir Dogs shows up and no one has done anything like Reservoir Dogs before, I think it would probably pop. It would still not pop nearly as big as it did back then, but it would
No,
still pop because he's
it would.
such a unique outlier kind of filmmaker and writer that it's just he's a special dude. But it still wouldn't pop as much as, if Pulp Fiction shows up today. No one's ever done Pulp Fiction. I hate to say it, that's also an $8 million movie with major movie stars in it and a
Right.
studio behind it, a major studio behind it. It's still going to make noise. But other than that, man, like, it's about timing. And that's the other thing you have to realize. Like I said, if Mark Duplass shows up today with a Mumblecore movie, with Puffy Chair is done today, it doesn't go.
Nope.
If Leland Dunham makes Tiny Furniture today, bye-bye. If Joe Swanberg makes any of his films today, no one will ever care.
Right.
Because that movement, it was a very small window for that crew of filmmakers to make it through. Just like in the 70s when Spielberg, Scorsese, Milius, Coppola, all of those guys came out, when they started letting the inmates run the asylum,
Right.
that was a window of opportunity that the studios opened up the doors and allowed the young filmmakers to come in and just gave them carte blanche because they were lost. They had no idea what to do because people weren't going to the movies anymore, and they gave these young kids the keys to the kingdom. That's a window of opportunity that closed. That's not going to happen again. It's not
Right.
going to happen ever again. That was that time. So a lot of people and a lot of filmmakers get caught up in the time period. Like I was the perfect example of that. I was waiting for my mariachi moment so long that it completely screwed me up to the point where I almost made a movie for a gangster, and we could talk about that whole story, and adventures with the mafia, because I thought it was my shot. I thought it was my lottery ticket. I thought it was that was thing. So I got caught in that time frame till I remember somebody telling me, a mentor of mine told me, I was like, man, I'm not getting to where I want to be. I'm like this and that, and Spielberg didn't have to do this, and Robert didn't have to do that, and they just said, I'm like, dude, it's not 1993 anymore, brother. Like, you've got to look at what's going on around you today. What is today's window, which, by the way, is closing. Whatever is going on today is going to close. Do you think that iPhone films are going to be around in 5 or 10 years in the way that they might be? Like when Tangerine showed up a few years ago, that was probably the peak of the iPhone movement, if you will, but there's a lot of filmmakers making it, and now they're choosing for it aesthetically to do it, but now it's being mixed in with everything else. It's
Right.
not it's not popped out anymore. It's like now it's just like with Black Magic, it's just another movie.
Right.
So technology, things that kind of make you stand out almost as a gimmick, those things don't work anymore because there's just too much content. But if you're able to create a system or some sort of revenue streams based on doing something like that, that's where the thing is. Kind of like with like a perfect example. This is a very obscure title, but Range 15. I don't know if you've ever heard that movie. About that movie, it was on my show. And those guys were a YouTube. They're basically a t-shirt company. Okay,
Mhm.
all ex-military, so they're all vets. and they're like one of the biggest merch shops for veterans, for police, and for firemen and paramedics. People buy their shirts. Okay, that's their niche. So then they opened up a YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel, they started to put out silly videos, horribly produced because they're freaking vets. They don't know how to produce films, but they had fun, and their audience ate it up. They loved it, and all of a sudden they had like 1 million followers, and they were like the guys in their niche. So they said, you know what, man, I really want to make a movie. I'm like, okay, let's try to crowdfund this. So they like business. They came at it as a business first, not as an artist, as a business, because they're businessmen. They had a very successful multi-million-dollar T-shirt company. So they said, well, let's try to crowdfund this, and they did. And they only wanted like $200,000 to go make this zombie action comedy. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So then they crowdfunded it from their community. Guess what? $1.2 million later,
whoa,
they had a budget for the film. So then they called up Keith David, they called up William Shatner, they called up Sean Austin, and they called up, of course, Danny Trejo, because Danny Trejo legally has to be in every movie, every action movie ever made. That's a legal thing.
Yeah, it's
with the universe. It's just
you can't break that rule. It's just, why would you want?
You have to. Right. Or if not, at least a picture of Danny Trejo somewhere in the movie.
Right.
So they made this movie. Right. And they made a $1.2 million movie, and they had this great documentary about how they made it, which is wonderful. I'm trying to get it on IFH TV on my streaming service. And they go out and they try to sell it, traditionally trying to sell it. So they went to all these distribution companies, and they're all like, oh, yeah, this horrible deals. And they're like, we're businessmen. This makes no sense in the world. It's no sense. Makes no sense. Right. So what did they do? They self-distributed it. And they've pulled in over $3 to $4 million already on that. Okay. Now they had an audience. They built it up. Is that model replicable? Yes. It took a lot of time to do, but it can be done. I can give you example after example after example of filmmakers who are able to do stuff like that. But that is the key, is creating this kind of revenue stream. Creating work by itself is not enough. You've got to be able to create revenue streams and understand marketing, understand business, just basic stuff like that, understand branding. All of these things have to be incorporated in your filmmaking. If not, you're not going to make it, especially at this budget range. If you expect to make a $1,000 movie and hope to sell it to a distributor for $10,000 or $15,000, good effing luck. It doesn't work that way. It just truly does. Unless you have Nicolas Cage in it, fighting Mike Tyson, and it's $1,000 movie.
Watch the hell out of that. I would watch.
I would watch it. That's a very AFME, American Film Marketing kind of title. But there is actually a movie with Mike Tyson.
Oh man, that would be great.
Oh no, there's actually a movie that was Steven Seagal versus Mike Tyson. That's where I got that from.
Okay.
And that does exist. You could search it up. It was like, this is insane. But if you're expecting that from a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 short film with no stars in it, good effing luck. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be, and if you do happen to do it, please call me and let me know how you did it.
Right.
And I'll have you on the show, because it's just not something that gets done. It really isn't. No. Could you make money with it? Could you distribute it and make some money with it? Absolutely. But are you going to expect a payday? A big payday? It's rough. So you really have to understand what you're doing with this. It's not as simple as just going out and making a $1,000 movie. I was very lucky. This Is Meg was sold to Hulu. I sold it internationally. I self-distributed it a bunch. I have it on SVOD, and TVOD, and AVOD, and a bunch of other places. This Is Meg is still generating revenue for me to this day. And On the Corner of Ego and Desire is about to be released soon. And, I could easily self-distribute that myself, and I am going to a certain extent. But then I also have a distribution partner that I'm going to be working with, who's going to get it out to places that I just can't get it to, especially internationally as well. So there's a lot of nuance in this conversation. There's more than we can talk about in this interview. The biggest advice I could give people is, and this is what I just started to do, is I got tired of not being invited to the party, so I created my own party. And I created my own community, and I created my own thing, because I got tired of waiting around for someone else to give me permission to do what I want to do, to create the art I want to create, to create the business I want to create. I got tired of waiting for other people. And in today's world, there is the ability to do everything yourself, to self-distribute, to build your own audience. It takes work, it takes time, it takes years. But if you're able to do it, you'll be able to, off that foundation, you'll be able to build not only a career, but an actual business that can support you, your family, and the people who work with you. But it takes time to do. And a lot of people just want that lottery ticket, man. And unfortunately, that's just not going to happen.
Well, that's a perfect segue into how I would like to wrap this up, because I am a person who is obviously a big fan of you, and I have been. I decided I'm pretty much where where you are at, where I just decided, you know what, I had this experience where like I had this script, and it got tossed around, and it was this thing, and I was super excited about it, and I thought it was, my ship's come in, and all these different things, and people were telling me, they're blowing all this smoke, and all this thing, and then at the end it was crickets. And you tell everybody, and you have one of these things, and it wasn't that it wasn't good. It was good, clearly, because people wanted it. It was the thing. But in the end, this business is so weird that you can't have something that's good and not go. And so
yes.
So for me, it was like, why am I still trying to get invited to this party? It's like, why not just do it myself? And you know what? And I want to build an audience that, is excited about that stuff. Be like, Rob's going to write this next thing, or Rob's doing another thing or something. Like the same way that I'm excited about seeing On the Corner of Ego and Desire, the same way that I watched This Is Meg on Hulu, the same way that I've, bought Broken and stuff like that, the same way I've read your book. Like these things, like I'm a member of your tribe. And so I am attempted to, to sort of spread my wings, and I'd love to follow in your footsteps. So I want to thank you not only for this interview, but I want to thank you for everything that you do for the community. I could not be a bigger fan. I love being part of the tribe. Everything that you're doing is so helpful and insightful, and I love your motivation videos that you do on YouTube and stuff like that. Those are my jam, man. I'm watching those all the time. And
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. I try to put those out, man. They're not easy to put together, but I put them out as much as I can. And I gotta ask you something, because you're an OG follower, if you will, of mine. When did you find Indie Film Hustle, and what did you think when you finally saw it? Because obviously I had been out of the game pretty much for almost 10 years, meaning like online a lot and stuff like that. What did you think when you saw it, and how did you find me?
I was looking. I found you through your podcast, and the website. I was looking for. It was included in one of those lists, like list of podcasts about filmmaking that you're probably not listening to, that sort of thing. And right. And I came across it, and I think I listened to my first podcast of yours that I listened to. I know I was working for FedEx at the time, and I was binging a lot of podcasts where I was just like out on the road, like walking, and I got my earbud in one ear, and I'm delivering packages, like, and the one you did with Jim Alls on Fight Club.
Jim's.
Yeah. And
that's a good one to start on, dude.
And I was like, I know Alex Ferrari. He did Broken, man. Like, he's got a podcast? What? And so
that was like episode like 89. So there was a lot already that you probably went back to, like, oh shit.
Yeah. There was once I got through, I was like, man, right. I got a bunch of stuff I can listen to now. So I went back and started binging them, and I just that's where I sort of jumped on, and I was hooked after that. And so just a big fan of the podcast, and I just sort of followed it through, like where you were going through, like especially with the website. I think your website is probably one of the best websites in terms of because I think a lot of people focus on the online stuff, and then they don't necessarily, like, I've never been to Film Riot's website, because it's like, what for? They exist on YouTube. But like your website, your Indie Film Hustle website, is so easy to use and will point you in so many different directions, so that when we started doing Bulletproof Screenplay, I immediately jumped onto that because it was there, and I was searching. I was like, one of those things that you leave up, that tab that you leave up and stuff like that, and refresh when you get back on the computer. That was Indie Film Hustle for me for like a while. So I was like, oh wow, he's got this other thing. So that's sort of like when you started moving into that direction, because screenwriting is sort of where I come from in the business. Like, you're a post guy, I'm a screenwriting guy, and so Like I like when you started doing that, I'm like, those are the type of things that get my juices flowing, and I've loved those interviews and stuff like that as well. But I also listen to your distribution stuff. Your when you did those series at Sundance um,
Yeah, yeah.
every year, and so I was definitely about those as well. It was really funny to hear that you shot a movie at Sundance because I was like, this guy is what? How does he have? What is he doing at Sundance? Like, what is everybody else doing in relation to like Alex? This guy doesn't sleep. He's like Ian McShane. He's like in everything. He's doing everything.
He's Ian McShane. He said everything. That's
What
great.
is
I
he
love that.
doing? Like, I was like, because, I know, like, I'm sure they invite you out to do these panels and stuff like that,
Every
for
once in a while, yeah.
Sundance and things like that. And so I'm like, when I heard you shot that movie there, I was just like, what? When did he have time? There's literally has to be a point where, and I'm somebody who works at night, so I know about not sleeping, but I know, but it's just like this guy's doing everything. If this guy's doing all this stuff, I gotta get my game up. Like this, like I'm slacking, man. This guy's got
Well,
stuff going
well, that's
on.
why I did that. That's why I did that whole episode on, like, people kept asking me, like, what's your daily schedule? Like, how do you do what you do? Like, how can you put out all this content and you're doing it all yourself and still make a movie and still have kids and still have a family and all that stuff? And I literally laid out this entire day. I'm like, all right, guys, you want to hear it? You're not gonna like it, but this is what I do. Wake up every morning at about 4:20. Every morning, go work out for an hour, go do this, go do that. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, at the end of the day, I did the math to the point where, like, I basically challenged anyone listening. I'm like, you got 3 hours, you could be doing something every day. And I
Right.
gave them like an hour, 2 hours commute and 8 hours at work and included family time. I'm like, you still got 3 hours, like Arnold Schwarzenegger says, sleep faster. Like, yeah,
Right.
there's always time. There's always time. You just have to make the choice to do stuff.
Yeah,
And you said you read the book, man. What did you think of the book?
I love the book. I really, the story is.
Can you tell your audience what the book is about? So a little bit.
Okay, so Alex has written this book where he through his, through sort of the idea of chasing his dream as a filmmaker gets into involved with shooting a movie for a gangster, and sort of chaos ensues where it's just like the idea of you trying to put this movie together with the expectations of these people is just well, I
Insane.
advise everyone to go out and read the book. And if you have a Hulu, find This Is Meg. It's a very funny movie. I, and it doesn't. That's the other thing. I remember you saying that the budget on This Is Meg was really really low, and it doesn't. I mean, I know you're a post guy, but like it doesn't look like it at all. It looks like it was shot
Mhm.
for much much more. It's one of those things where it puts it to shame, and so like some of these movies that you see coming out, like where you're like, we shot this for like $20,000. Like I remember that movie. They Look Like People,
Mhm.
which I was a very big fan of and stuff like that. But it still kind of looks like it was shot for $20,000. um,
That's what I try to do that. I try to do that with everything I do. Like when you watch Ego and Desire, man, it's still honestly it's probably the prettiest thing I've ever shot in my entire life. Like it's stunning, and I've got a cast of thousands there, and like it's wonderful. Like you see that the snow's drizzling, and we actually did a scene you probably saw it in the trailer where it's right in the middle of the Park City and on Main Street, right in front of the Egyptian Theater at night, and it looks like we shut down Main Street in the middle of Sundance. Like it looks like we did that, but we didn't. We just shot at 4:30 in the morning, and
right.
all the lights were on, and the snow is drizzling, and my wonderful actress Sonia is out there, and my DP Austin, and we're freezing our asses off. It was just the three of us, and we literally. And the funny story behind that is where we took refuge was inside the Egyptian theater because they were just opening up for the day. So we like knocked, like, can we come in? And they let us in, and we bought an expensive hot coffee there, ridiculously expensive hot coffee but we're like,
It
sure,
looks
it's
like you
fine,
belong. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
sure, and it was great, man, and I'm so proud of that movie, but I can't wait for you guys to see it. It's something I know the tribe has been dying to watch.
I also got a plug your recent episode of Indie Film Hustle with
Mhm.
Darius Britt. Uh,
Ah, Darius, my
I
man.
love that episode. Oh man, I got so much life from that. There are two podcasts right now. There's one with Ryan Connolly and Ted from Indie Mogul, and your podcast with Darius. And I'm like, I keep listening to them over and over because it's giving me so much life. Like I'm going through this thing right now, and I'm just like, oh, I need to hear this. I need it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just need to understand that you're not crazy, that this thing like that other people are going through these experiences, and that in this content game, which is it's just killer, and you just gotta you that grind. I feel like we get used to a grind in so many other aspects of our lives, like
Hmm.
that grind of work, or that even working out, that grind and stuff like that. It's easy to understand those, but it's for some reason when it comes to our dreams, we don't understand, people don't understand necessarily the grind of putting it together, like bending the universe, which is what I like to call it. Like you got to bend the universe to that thing. And it's very much like, bending iron. You gotta, first you gotta have the skill to know how to bend iron. Then once you know how to got a skill, then you gotta practice. You gotta keep going at it until eventually
Hmm.
you can bend that piece of metal until the ways that you want, and you can make beautiful things, and you can do that stuff. But you gotta give yourself the skills, and you
I'll, t-
can't just come at it. It's not
I'll
something
tell.
like a sword the first day.
No, it's. I'll leave it at this. I'll leave you at this, man. The biggest issue that I think filmmakers are facing today is their own personal mindsets. I find so many people, and I'm sure you know people too, who are super talented that just aren't making it where they want to be. And a lot of that is the programming that we were born with, not born with, but we're raised with. So whatever our beliefs are about money, whatever our beliefs are about our own skills, our own sets, those are all set within the first 7 years of your life. It's a scientific neuroscience. Like within the first 7 years of life, all the programming or the software of your mind is created. So that's why rich people stay rich and poor people stay poor, because that is what they know. That is what's around them. So that's why a lot of times poor people look at rich people with like, oh my God, I can't believe they've done that, or oh, they screwing, they must be screwing somebody, because that is their perspective, and vice versa. And I don't want to turn this into a class thing, but unfortunately, how many people do you know who are rich, who you've met, and you go, how in God's green earth are these motherfuckers? Like, how are these guys rich? Like, they're idiots, they're
Right.
morons. Like, what is the deal? Is because even on a moronic standpoint, there's many of them in the public eye, if I may be so bold to say, that are rich people who are morons, but yet have been able to ascend to the highest powers in the world. That you feel like, how is this possible? Like, how, and they're not smart, they're not educated, they're not well read. What is it? It's because they were raised in an environment where they understood the cues and things to do in order to make money, in order to maintain wealth or create wealth with themselves. And they have a belief in it because that's all they know. It's kind of like if you are born into a family that are goat herders, well, that's what you know. And nothing's wrong with being a goat herder, but the
Right.
point is that that's what I know. I can't relate to the guy in the castle. Like the kid born in the castle and the kid born as a goat herder have two very different experiences, especially the first 7 years. So what are those parents telling the goat herders? You've got to work really hard every day of your life. Life is difficult. You got to work hard just to get a dollar. Don't trust rich people. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't follow your dreams because you got to make a living. All of those kind of subconscious presets are set in your software, which turn into your hardware inside your mind. That's called the subconscious mind. And then on the opposite side, when you're raised in an environment that is very, like if you're born into a family that is, two professors, and we've heard this all the time, two PhDs, guess what? You're probably going to read a lot. You're probably going to do well in school. Generally speaking, these are generalizations, but it's true. So once you understand and recognize those patterns, then when you can start to try to reprogram yourself, because it is a programming. Because I realized that experience with my gangster Jimmy when I was 26 completely programmed me to be afraid of making a feature film. And it took me 14 years, because when I made Broken, I could have made a feature film. I had the
Right.
skills to do it. There's no question I could have done it. And I
Absolutely.
could have and I could have done it with a DVX, and I could have done all of it, and we could have made it happen without question. I would have been doing mumblecore before mumblecore came out. You know, I
Exactly.
think but at a higher quality level. But I was afraid on a subconscious level. On a conscious level, I was like, I always tell people, I'm like, I'm Tarantino, I'm Robert, let's do this. We're gonna, we're going after it. But I was constantly sabotaging myself and telling myself, oh, I have to have this perfect thing, or I have to have this budget, or I have to have this camera, or I have to have this thing, or no, I can't do this because of this, this, and this. I was constantly making excuses for myself, or I would bring people around me who I knew weren't going to take me to the place that I needed to be. All of this was on a subconscious level. Why? Because your brain is trying to protect you. Because the one thing that you have to understand is your mind is not built for your happiness. Your mind is built to keep you alive. That is what your mind is there to do. It doesn't care if you're happy. Happiness is irrelevant to your survival. That is how the mind, on an evolutionary standpoint, has developed. So why is the brain stopping me from making a feature film? Is because it's uncertain, it's scary, and I had a lot of pain happen when I did it last time, so I'm going to avoid that pain at all costs. Why? Because it's protecting me from the tiger around the corner that's going to eat me. And the tiger around the corner that's going to eat me in this scenario is making a feature film. But once I'm able to break that cycle, reprogram the hardwiring, the neural pathways that have been soldered into my motherboard, when I'm able to change that, that's when real things happen. So same thing happens for my weight. I've been struggling with my weight all my life till I finally decided this is it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then I went off and started a new program in my head. And I changed my beliefs about my weight. I changed beliefs about my health. And all of a sudden, I dropped 40 pounds. I'm in the best shape of my life. Why? And I've been able to maintain it for months now. And I will continue to maintain it because now it's painful for me not to work out. It's painful for me not to wake up at 4:20 in the morning, where at the beginning, I promise you, brother, it was not easy. I promise you that iPhone went off. I'm like, son of a, and then after 2 or 3 days, and you haven't worked out in like 5 years, you're just like, oh, everything hurts. Why am I doing this to myself? Oh God. But after a certain amount of time, which ends up being anywhere between like 4 to 6 weeks, it becomes a habit. And once you're able to create that habit, that is what creates meaningful change in your life. Same thing for writing, same things for filmmaking, and all that kind of stuff. So that is the key to being able to move forward. I think it's one of the biggest problems facing not only filmmakers, but people in general. And that's what I'm trying to change. As you've heard in some of my podcasts, I've talked about mindset, about breaking through fear, and about all of that kind of stuff. And that's stuff that nobody really talks about. I'm the only guy talking about that, especially in filmmaking and screenwriting. And
No, and
it's
you did
pretty
a really
insane.
great YouTube video on that, which I will link in the description below on this. Um, but you're absolutely right. I think even as many as as few as 3 years ago, I tried to start a YouTube channel, and I was going at it, and I think I tried too much too soon, where I was just like, I can do 2 or 3 videos a week, like I can knock it out, and I just burnt myself out, and then I was like, every time I tried after that or was thinking about it, it was this thing where like, is it going to be enough for me? Is it going to? And finally, I just decided that I was out of excuses, and I've been doing these videos once a week since March, and every week now. Now I'm getting to that point where I look forward to it. I'm knocking
Right.
3 videos out this week, not so that I can release 3 videos in a week, but so that I'm putting up more content. I'm putting up more
Batching,
different things, and I'm
batching
just,
it, baby. Batch it,
yeah,
batch it,
just
batch it, batch it.
getting it out there and just working in it and putting it out there and finding the joy in the process and
Mhm.
being a part of that. And that is something that, like you said, we're just not built for. Like it's not something that, because we all have that idea of like, I'm this. We have this idea of ourselves that doesn't match the reality. And you somewhere between reality and expectation is
Somewhere
where
between ego and
desire.
desire lies the truth, my friend.
Right, right.
But I hate to cut this short, man. Oh, not short. I
No,
hate
no,
to
no,
cut
no,
this
no.
long because I got my daughters are calling me to pick them up from the park.
No, 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 absolutely. But this was so great, and I thank you for this so much. I can't wait to see what's going on, and I'm looking forward to the movie, man.
And I appreciate it, man. There's a lot of stuff Indie Film Hustle's doing, and if anyone listening wants to check out my stuff, I'm at indiefilmhustle.com. My streaming site is at indiefilmhustle.tv. If you want to check out the book, go to shootingforthemobwith2os.com. And I also do coaching, consulting, speaking, all that kind of stuff. And you can check all that out at alexferrari.com. And Bulletproof Screenplay podcast. I mean, there's just too much. I can't list it all here.
IndieFilmHustle.com. Go there. It's a great hub. You'll find all the things.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And then we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, you love it, Qui-Gon Jinn.